A short disclaimer. The views expressed in this video are my own and do not represent the views of any institution or organization. The narrative described herein is based on my recall of the events and may not be perfectly quoted. There is strong language in the presentation that I chose not to edit out because it would have taken away from the authenticity of the presentation. The presentation describes the conflict between ketogenic diets and mainstream dogma. Hello, I'm Dr. Pete. Many of you know me from the CrossFit box where I am a member. That would be Octane CrossFit. Some of you there know that I've been on a well-formulated ketogenic diet for the last 8 months and successfully reversed prediabetes in the first 52 days of that diet. Others know me because of my past history, either the climbing that we did together over the years in the Black Hills, Colorado, other places. And some of you know me because we grew up together. In any case, what I want to do is tell you something about a fairly profound event that happened to me yesterday. This weekend, I completed a Starting Strength seminar series on performing 5 essential types of weight lifts. The back squat, deadlift, the power clean, the overhead press, and the bench press. The seminar series was basically comprised of 2 things. Learning the correct method for each of those lifts, and then learning how to specifically coach each of the lifts. And the seminar, it's designed for all kinds of people. If all you want to do is go and learn about the lifts, there were people that were there at the seminar for that reason. I was there because I want to learn how to do these lifts correctly, because I've been injured, I've had some issues doing these things, and I'm really glad that I went to the seminar for that reason. But additionally, I was there because I am learning to coach, and it's one of the things I want to do in my future, hopefully sooner than later. But what happened yesterday, and this was a very intense thing. So yesterday we met at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we spent between 8 and 3 in the afternoon working on the power clean. First, we had instruction on how to do it, the movement correctly. And then the other part of that was, okay, if this is the correct way to do it, how do you actually coach that element? All right. Then we broke out into groups, and we did 5 sets of 5 power cleans. And the way this worked is you would do a set and one of your colleagues would coach you. And then you would rotate. So on every single set of 5, somebody is doing the element, and then one of us is coaching them, and then vice versa. So that you're learning about how to do things in both worlds, the coaching and the lifting. And then we would do a 6th set. And on that set, Mark Ripito, who is, an esteemed, incredibly experienced lifter, who then would evaluate our lifts directly. And I was in the process of doing the power clean while he was evaluating me, where at the end of my 2nd rep, he stopped me and he asked me this question: how much do you weigh? And I was like, I'm 142. And he says, why? And I said, because that is my normal body weight given the composition of my diet and activity level. All right. And he said, well, what the hell is your diet? And I said, well, I'm ketogenic. And he said, well, what is that? And I said, well, it's a diet that is high in fat, low in carbohydrates, and moderate in protein. All right. He looks to his left and catches the eyes of one of the
full on starting strength coaches that's there, who's also a registered dietitian. And he said, what the fuck is a keto diet? And the registered dietitian looks at him and he says, it's total fucking bullshit. Ripito looks back at me and goes, good luck with your life, right? And he says, why are you doing this? And the whole room was quiet, of course. They're all, there's 25 people in there, maybe a couple more counting the coaches, and they're all semicircled around me at this point, right? Watching me do these lifts and listening to his interpretation. And I took a second to think about it, because I don't necessarily want to blurt out in a room. And you could argue what I'm doing right now is exactly that. I'm blurting out this very personal thing into the internet sphere. But I looked at him and I said, because 8 months ago I was pre-diabetic and I reversed the condition. And I'm not going to go back to eating carbohydrates, right? So then he kind of like rolls his eyes and he's like, okay, let's get on with the lifts, which we did. And, and I did pretty good. I learned a lot in this seminar series, and I can say right to the camera that my clean is a hell of a lot better than it was before this weekend. I still have things to work on. But anyway, a little bit later, I was speaking with one of the other strength coaches who's there. She was actually an intern, and she informed me that carbohydrates are an essential nutrient in our diet. Now, anyone who's in the keto club at this point should know that carbohydrates are not an essential nutrient. We make them perfectly fine. We don't need to eat carbohydrates for our glycogen stores to be normal. And anyone who's read the actual peer-reviewed literature that Volek and Finney have published back in the 80s, they know that if you are fat adapted, that our glycogen stores are normal as anyone who's eating carbohydrates. Now, after getting sort of like totally slammed during my power clean demonstration to Ripito, I just looked at her and I didn't say anything. I'm just not going to have the argument. But then a few minutes later, I end up talking with Ripito again and this registered dietitian who's a starting strength coach. And they're asking me about the diet again. And the guy who said it was fucking bullshit, right? He's hammering on me about it a little bit. I finally just said, dude, have you read the literature? Do you know the literature? Do you know about Finney and Volek? Do you know that anything about the work that they have done? And he looks at me and says, yeah, that's total bullshit. All of it was bullshit. It's just a bunch of cyclists. It means absolutely nothing for us. So the reason that I'm doing this video is I want to point out to all of you that if you are fat adapted, like I am at this point, number one, this whole weekend, I didn't have to eat constantly on Saturday and Sunday. Everybody in that place was sugar burning animal, and they were having to eat. I watched this going on around me all day long. And the reason they're having to do that is because they're hammering their glycogen way down low. So their blood sugar drops, and then they need to eat. They are incapable of shifting into fat burning. I, on the other hand, am a fat burner, right? I'm fully keto adapted. I'm in at least my 8th month of this, and I've been religious. My ketones on average are 2.8. All right, on average. The lowest they've ever been in the last 8 months is 0.9. All right, and that's when I was traveling. The thing you guys got to understand is that in terms of fat in your body right now, you have 20 times more energy available to burn
than a sugar burner does.
They've got about 2,000 calories worth in their liver. They can't access the fat burning pathways, not efficiently. So as soon as they burn that 2,000 down, like in the 5-hour session yesterday of cleans, they're not even into the second set of those things, and they're having to eat energy bars. I only had to have one meal yesterday, and I didn't get to eat it until 3 in the afternoon. And that was right before we started learning how to do the overhead press. All right. So what disappoints me most about the dietitian, to conclude this, all right, is the lack of the open mind, number one, and almost a complete ignorance of the literature. I think as health professionals that all of us out there have an obligation to know what's going on and to know the literature, the peer-reviewed, high-quality science that's been done about this situation, and to be more open-minded when they run into somebody like me that knows something and actually can provide them with the references rather than just outright dismissal. Now, this guy isn't the only one that I've run into like this, right? My primary care physician is in this boat. And even in my CrossFit box, I've run into people that are adamant about this. You've got to have carbohydrates in order to do this stuff. Well, yeah, you got to have the carbohydrates to do what you're doing because you are a carbohydrate burner and you can't access the pathways that I access because you're not fat adapted. So actually, in terms of overall energy platforms, you're actually at a disadvantage compared to me. This isn't sort of an anecdotal thing, but I'm going to just tell you right now that since being fat adapted, I have more energy. I have felt less depleted during CrossFit doublets or triplets than I ever have before. All right, and I'm eating, if you want to talk calories, which is not really the thing we ought to do, I'm eating about 3,000 calories a day. And I was even questioned about that yesterday. They're like, no, you couldn't possibly be eating 3,000 calories. How do you know that? Because I entered them into a food program. And I did this because I was interfacing with my own health coach at Verta to try and figure out some issues about the amount of protein I was eating. So yeah, I know how many calories I'm eating every single day. And to finish this, what I want everyone to understand is that the total calories don't matter here. It's what the proportionality is, right? It's what proportion of carbohydrates are those total calories? How much protein is there and how much fat there is? It's that proportionality that matters. And all of this business with diabetes and obesity and cardiovascular disease has to do with hormonal dysregulation, and it's tied directly to the standard American diet that has 65% carbohydrates in it and is a high insulin generating diet versus the one that I am on, which is high fat, moderate protein, and low carbohydrate, and therefore low insulin. All right? So my word of the day is that even if you know nothing about ketogenic diets, and especially to the dietitians that might see this, you need to go out there and learn the literature about what this has to say before we leave you behind, because you're working in the Stone Age at this point in regard to diet. Thank you, and this is Dr. Pete signing off.